it's been reported by Shams Charania that Billy Donovan and Chicago Bulls actually agreed to a contract extension after last season. Billy Donovan's in the third year of his 4-year deal that he agreed to when coming to the Chicago Bulls, so next season would have been his last season, but that looks like that's no longer the case, as they agreed to a multi-year deal, according to Shams Charania, after next season. So I don't know how many years that is on that multi-year deal, but it's one, shocking that we didn't find this information out until now, but two, I don't know why it's been so secretive. I feel like this is something that's usually reported very, very quickly, especially for a coach like Billy Donovan, who I know a lot of people know who he is and understand that, hey, he's the head coach of the Chicago Bulls, one of the biggest market teams in the NBA. So a little shocking that this news came out now, but let's discuss it, because I think Billy Donovan's been getting a lot of heat in this season, and I think some of it is definitely deserved. But I really want to break it down and kind of talk about what really does this actually mean for the Bulls, and is this actually a mistake, or is this a good thing? Casey Johnson wrote up a really good article. He reiterated that the Bulls and Billy Donovan have had such a great relationship, specifically with Arturas Karnisovas and Billy Donovan. Those two guys have been really talking a lot together. They're on great communicating terms, which is something that's good, because, I mean, we've seen before with the Bulls, front office doesn't have good communication with the coach, or sometimes it looks like the relationship is a little bit more than just business, right? Fred Hoiberg and John Paxson and Garth Foreman. So it looks like that this partnership is actually good. It's a good business partnership, and they have a good partnership going, and they're consistently talking to each other. So read through this by Casey Johnson, NBC Sports Chicago, by the way. But one thing, when I was reading through this article, I was just looking at this, and I'm like, Donovan addressed some of the things that some of the critics and what they're saying, or sorry, Casey Johnson addressed some of the critics about Donovan, which was, that Donovan doesn't make, good X's and O's changes. And I've been saying that as much as I've been mostly a Billy defender in my time, I do think that Donovan has made some major coaching errors this season. And I still, even before he got here, have said that I think Billy Donovan, the one thing he does struggle with is in-game adjustments. I think that's something that I've seen when watching him when he was in OKC, that he struggles to adjust in the middle of a game. But Casey Johnson pointed out that he's made actually several adjustments. First off, changing the offense, so it's not very heavy on isolation and just heavy, DeMar ISO or Zach ISO, right? He changed the rotation so that it would feature Zach being in the second unit instead of DeRozan, which is something I called for last season, and he did it this year. He placed an emphasis on paint touches and corner three-pointers for Nikola Vucevic, which the corner is, it's working out well this season, because I think that's actually where you should put Vucevic. But the paint touches is something that I think is not actually shown up, and I'm going to show you why. But when looking at these sort of things for Billy Donovan, yes, he definitely adjusted the offense this season, or during the offseason, that it's not isolation heavy. The Bulls are one of the top teams in the NBA in passes per game. They're one of the top teams in the NBA in passes per possession. So it's not isolation heavy anymore. But here's the problem, guys. The offense isn't working. The Bulls' offensive rating right now is 20th this season. See, this season. So it's not exactly like, hey, you made good changes. And to be honest, I think the idea behind these changes was correct, but you haven't reached your goal, which is that you're supposed to have a better offense. The offense right now is worse. It's been the main struggle throughout this season, where the Bulls go on like runs of like 4 to 5 minutes where they don't they don't actually score a bucket. That's an issue. Compare this to last season, where the Bulls were ranked 13th on offense, and we saw, down the stretch that they really started to struggle. Like, they were a top 10 offensive team in offensive rating for a while, but then obviously, when Levine got injured and other injuries started to occur, that offensive rating went down a little bit. But 13th is still pretty respectable. So you're looking at a top half offense last season, but this season so far, we're a bottom third offense. So yes, Donovan made this adjustment, but it hasn't exactly worked. So there's something to point out there. Casey Johnson talked about, paint touches. Well, right now, and I've been pointing this out all season, the Chicago Bulls, they're bottom 5 in paint points this season. This is something that I think is just straight up inexcusable, because the Bulls do not have three-point shooting on this roster. And even though they don't have three-point shooting to create spacing, and I've always said you can create spacing in other ways. It involves player movement. You don't need three-point shooting to have spacing on the floor. I don't care how bad your spacing is, you need to score points in the paint. The Oklahoma City Thunder aren't a great three-point shooting team, but they're up here in points in the paint per game. They're one of the top teams in the NBA, okay? The Chicago Bulls, they're all the way down here. And this isn't good. This is not a good thing to continue, as I think Vucevic needs more touches, which I think Donovan has neglected Vucevic at the wrong times this season. I think Vucevic should be posting up, not just so Vucevic can score more, but I think it also opens up more paint touches in general for the entire team on cuts, but also him touching the paint. So this is something that, yes, Donovan has said this, but has he actually, put it into his game plan? Has he actually executed it? I don't know. And honestly, I personally don't think he has. So that's two things where he's making adjustments or says that he's making adjustments, but they're actually not working so far. And I know it's early in the season. We're 20 games in here, but these are bad trends already. These are bad trends that we're looking at. So I think that this is worth noting when it comes to Donovan saying, "Hey, we need to fix this," or "Hey, we need to do this." That's great if you say it. That's good that you're actually identifying the problem, but can you actually fix it? That's the part where I don't know. And that's kind of like my the cons of having Billy Donovan being extended when he is only 2 years into his contract. This is his third year. And I don't know if he's really even proven much during his time in Chicago. So it's just kind of odd to see that he's all of a sudden being extended in his third year of his 4-year contract. And we're 20 games into the season. But to do the flip side, Billy Donovan has throughout his time as coach has always had a winning record, except for his first year in Chicago, which obviously this team was not supposed to win. But every single year he's had an over 500 record, and they make the playoffs. I mean, in OKC, every single season they made the playoffs, and this is something that's I think important to note. Sorry, that's not it. Right here, in the time when Billy Donovan was here, it was first year they made it to the Western Conference Finals. Probably should have made it to the NBA Finals, in my opinion, but this was the 3-1 lead blown to Golden State, and then they blew a 3-1 lead. But then every single year, I mean, we're looking at they're making the playoffs every single year, right? And obviously, Kevin Durant leaving, hurts their chances of going farther into the playoffs. But at the end of the day, we're still looking at a coach that, besides one season, has had a winning record. And I have full faith that the Bulls are making the playoffs this season. I don't know why people are panicking too much already, but I have making the playoffs again. So, out of all these seasons, I'm looking at 7 out of the 8 seasons that Billy Donovan has led his team to the playoffs. So that's obviously a good thing. But on the other side of this is that another good thing is during his time in OKC, Billy Donovan and the defensive rating, he's always had a top 10 defensive rating on his teams, except for his first season, which was this year, when they ranked second in offense, and Kevin Durant was there, right? But they were still 13th in defensive rating this season. But then, all the other 4 years in OKC, they were top 10 in defense. His first year in Chicago, they were 11th in defensive rating, and then obviously last season injuries derailed them. But they were a top 10 defensive team, throughout multiple months. So either way, Billy Donovan has shown that he is a good defensive coach. He has been a good coach on the defensive end, and even if he doesn't have the greatest defenders on his roster, the team ends up being typically a good defensive team. I know last season was different, but I think last season there's a lot more variables at play. But still, that team last season was a good defensive team for a good amount of the season. So that can't go unnoticed. So there's that. Now, one thing that people have been talking about a lot, which with Billy Donovan is he a coach that can actually develop his players? And this is, with Patrick Williams and his development, which I think he will has actually developed really nicely this season. And I'm not that concerned with them. But also guys with Dalen Terry and Ayo Dosunmu, I mean, these are two guys that a lot of Bulls fans are looking at to be important pieces of the Bulls' future. And they have to hit their potential, which I totally, I agree that those guys have to hit their potential, whatever it is. But can he develop those guys? And the answer to that question, and this was brought up in one of my streams, which is, I don't know. I personally do not know if Billy Donovan can develop young players and actually develop them correctly. But I'm going to point out 2 players in his time in OKC that I think are important to look at. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the first year in OKC for Shai was this season, and Shai went from 11 points per game to all of a sudden 19 points per game. This dude made a serious jump in his first season under Billy Donovan. I know it's just one season, but I mean, I think this is something to actually look at. We're not talking about a top 3 overall pick. We're talking about the 11th overall pick, who obviously had some promise. I liked him on the Clippers. I liked him before he was even drafted. And he made a serious jump in his first season under Billy Donovan. And one thing that I think to know is that Billy Donovan played him at the 2 guard. A lot of people thought Shea was a point guard. Well, Shea was put to the 2 guard, and Chris Paul was the point guard that season. And people criticized Donovan for that, but it ended up being the right decision. So this is something I think is worth noting. The other person I want to look at is Luguentz Dort. Dort actually came into the Thunder in this season, so still under Billy Donovan, and he was a two-way player. He was undrafted, I believe, out of Arizona State, and was on the Thunder as a two-way contract, and pretty much right when he got there, he was making a big impact, and then the Thunder signed him to an actual NBA contract for the rest of the season. So we're looking at a guy that, I mean, was very much, didn't have a job, went undrafted, and all of a sudden he's developed into this guy that can actually be a starting caliber player. I know these numbers don't look amazing, but like it was pretty widely talked about how Dort, developed very quickly that season. Again, that's under Billy Donovan. And it's also worth noting that like these teams, in OKC, like they're all looking to win, right? There isn't really like a young player that is, honed in as like a franchise cornerstone or a very important player that I can look at and be like, did they develop under Billy Donovan? Because, most of these teams have Russell Westbrook, and then obviously, you had Chris Paul and SGA this season here. But these other teams, they had KD for one season, and then they move on from the KD leaves, and then it's Westbrook, PG, and Carmelo Anthony, and then it's just Westbrook and PG, right? All these teams were looking to win, and none of these teams really had any young talent on there that can be like, hey, did this guy develop under Billy Donovan? So I think, honestly, the answer to that question, can Billy develop young players, is I don't know. And I think we're going to find out that answer with P. Will and Dalen Terry. Ayo Dosunmu, I think, is a little bit of a different case because he was a 3-year player out of college. So I think, honestly, it's a little different with Ayo. But I personally think P. Will is actually taking a huge step. I was not very pleased with his first 4 games of the season. I felt very, very bad. But then since then, I think Patrick Williams has taken a huge step forward in terms of his defense. Like, I think this is like I fully trust that Patrick Williams is the best defender on this roster currently, and has some serious potential to be a great defender in this league. And I think Billy's been a big part of that. Now, one thing that I always have said about coaches is that they can't ever give a player confidence. That's something that I hate when I see people say, like, well, Billy has to play this guy to give him more confidence. What a coach can do, though, is take confidence away from a player. That is definitely something that they can do. They can't give a player confidence, but they can take confidence away. And I think they've used Patrick well. They have not benched him yet, which I've been calling for a benching for a while, but that actually looks like to be the wrong decision. So I'm glad Donovan is stuck with Patrick Williams and just kept him in the starting lineup. And I think that he's used Patrick well, and has decided well on when to have him close games and when to have him not close games. Alex Caruso is someone that I think has to be closing a lot of games, whether that's him being in for Ayo or P. Will. Alex Caruso has to be out there because at the end of the day, we are looking to win games. But I think Donovan has chosen correctly when to use P. Will in those closing lineups. And we've seen, though, multiple times now that Patrick Williams has made a lot of mistakes, or it's more specifically a lot of mental errors in crunch time. I think in Boston, he missed that rebound, and then he took that shot, right? In OKC, he didn't box out his guy in the last 2 minutes, one of the possessions in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter, where the Thunder missed a shot. He just completely did not box out his man. And that was a crucial missed defensive rebound. So, like, I've seen where P. Will has, failed or has had a lot of negative plays in crunch time. But Donovan has, not just like only kept them out there and potentially hurt the team of winning, but he's done a good job of making sure that he picks and chooses when to use P. Will in those crunch time moments, in the crunch time moments. So I still think that question is just still, to be determined at this moment, is can Donovan actually develop these guys? But at the end of the day, we're looking at Billy Donovan having some long-term security here in Chicago, or at least having some long-term security of having being paid. This obviously does not mean that Billy Donovan is guaranteed to be here for however long he is signed for now, but it looks like that he's at least here for a good bit of time. I don't think Billy Donovan is the best coach in the league, nor do I think he's the top 5 coach in this league, but I definitely think that he's one of the better coaches in this league. But, would I rank him top 10? I don't even know about that. He's definitely made some mental errors this season, or coaching errors this season. I think he has done some problems, has made some problems within the offense that he's, trying to actually hit the right goal, but the things aren't being executed correctly. But I will say this about Billy Donovan, and this is where I'm going to close. He has done a good job of calling out the 3 stars, because at the end of the day, the roster has more issues, and that's the biggest issue, honestly, is with the roster. It's not Billy Donovan. If Donovan is actually an issue, he's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is the roster, okay? And that's something for the front office that they have to fix. That's not on Donovan. He called out the big 3, saying that they have to play better. And it was true. Like, the big 3 have had to play better to start the season, and I'm glad he called them out. He benched Zach LaVine in that Magic game when Zach LaVine 100% should have been benched. And that takes guts. After you just sign this guy to a max contract and is one of your all-stars, you just benched him in crunch time. That takes guts, and a lot of coaches wouldn't do that, but he did the right thing. And last but not least, Billy Donovan has always done the right thing to the media, which is that he always takes blame to himself. He never puts blame on the players. A lot of questions from the media guys would be like, so what do you think about this? And should this player do this? Or did this player do the wrong thing? And Donovan is always deflecting from the player and always says that I need to do a better job of helping that player. So he always takes the criticism instead of blaming it on the player in the media. I'm sure that he goes and talks to the player after, the media session, but at least during the media, he has never been an issue in the media, as we've seen with other coaches that they've been an issue in the media in their time in Chicago. So that's where I'm going to leave the Billy Donovan discussion at. You guys leave it in the comment section down below what you think of Billy Donovan. Was this too quick to re-sign him or extend him? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, like Chicago Bulls content, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.